mistake at all. This is not Dubai. This is Senegal, and we are on the highway heading out to the Gambia. Now, that's where we're going to spend the New Year celebrations. You know, we've had a very good time here in Senegal, albeit a very short one, but certainly Gambia is the place to be. It's where all the action is. We're spending about a week in Gambia, you know, engaging the people and authorities in the Gambia. We're slowly but surely getting closer to Ghana. It's about 4,000 kilometers from, you know, Senegal to Ghana. But bit by bit, little by little, we would get home sooner rather than later. The last nearly 5 months have been exciting, I must tell you, albeit with some challenges. You know, a lot of the countries have embraced our vision of a united Africa where all the borders ought to be open for African people. Some of the countries have also been, you know, very aloof. They've been very unconcerned about the need to open our borders. But I've said time and again that we've got to move on nonetheless. Like the European Union, my friends, when the EU started the integration process, some of the countries were not enthused. They were not excited, you know, by the need to collapse the borders and to allow the free movement of people and goods. But eventually, they signed up when they saw the benefits. And there would be enormous benefits for Africa, without a doubt, if we removed the restrictions and the borders. See, keeping the restrictions, requiring for Africans to have visas before they get into other African countries, is reminiscent of, you know, apartheid era. It's the same as, you know, the years gone by where Africans in their own country were told to produce passes in places like Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, in places like Southwestern Africa, now Namibia, were required to produce passes before they could walk freely in their own countries. Now, these are colonial lines that were drawn in the 1800s in Africa, you know, to keep brothers and sisters apart from each other. Several years down the line, we are still maintaining these restrictive colonial lines. And the time has come, we believe, for us to dismantle them. Indeed, the African Union believes in that, except that the AU is very slow. They want this to happen in 40 years, but we say that 40 years is a long time. We can do this in 5 years, my friends. Africa can be completely borderless in 5 years. The concerns about security issues can easily be addressed if the countries put in place the necessary biometric systems and, you know, new technology, drone technology, intelligence sharing, you know, to make sure that we combat together cross-border crime. But ultimately, it has to happen. Our people need to be able to move freely. And we can't hide under the cover of, oh, a handful of criminals will come and misbehave, so we are closing the borders. That is not right. And we are hoping that, you know, the leaders who have encouraged us to go on would give meaning, would walk the talk, and actually make it happen. And so, it's just gone past 7 in the morning. It's still pitch dark. I think Senegal should have adjusted the time, you know, daylight saving, the way North America and Europe does. you know, but it is what it is, and I'm just impressed by the smooth nature of the highway. It's a very beautiful highway, and they're keeping the street lights on. The street lights are solar, you know. They don't allow it to completely get shut down or shut off before they fix them. Maintenance is key, and if African countries are maintaining the infrastructure that we spend so much to build, everything will be all right. But clearly some countries have a positive maintenance culture and others don't. So anyway, we are in the west coast of Africa now, heading to the smiling coast of Africa, which is the Gambia. We usually don't drive in the night, but it's not night, it's morning. Unfortunately, it is dark in Senegal, and so we must plow on just so that we can catch a ferry and get into Banjul, the Gambia, soon enough. There's going to be a lot of fun in Gambia. All the New Year celebrations, you know, the musical concerts, you name it. Gambia would be the place to be for us. And so we hope to see you in the Gambia, which is the smiling coast of Africa, very soon. Keep us in your thoughts, in your prayers, and when you do pray, pray for better leaders for Africa, leaders with a vision, leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, who would think outside their generation and beyond their generation, you know, who know that the future of Africa is not in the next elections. You know, a lot of the leaders in Africa are thinking about the next elections, but we need to think beyond the next elections and to think about how we can, you know, move this country, this continent, you know, decades ahead. Can you imagine a railway line from Algeria to Cape Town in South Africa? But that is possible. A railway line from the north of Africa to the south of Africa through West Africa is possible. I mean, in Russia, there are train lines where you could drive, where you could ride a train for about 2 weeks to get to your final destination. And it's thousands and thousands of kilometers. And so if the Russians have done it, where from the starting point to the finish point takes you about 2 weeks, I don't see why Africa, with all its potential and resources, cannot cobble resources together and make this project happen. We've got to think big. We've got to, you know, think decades ahead of us. When Kwame Nkrumah was building the motorway, constructing the motorway in Tema, people said there weren't that many cars in Ghana. So why was he wasting Ghana's money to build a motorway that would have only a fewer vehicles? Today, that motorway that many people rubbished is still serving Ghana very well in the Tema enclave of Ghana. And so if Africans can think about a railway line from North Africa to Southern Africa, you can imagine the business potential. You hop on a train and in a day or two, you are in Southern Africa. That is possible if only there is visionary leadership. And that is what we expect of the leaders of Africa, to think big and not be obsessed with elections. Every time elections, we are beating up each other, you know, kicking each other, wasting resources just to win political power. That is not right for Africa. Yes, we've got to have elections, and that is why I am a believer of a one-term presidential election for countries. You could decide to do what, 5 years or 7 years, you know, as your presidential term. You come and do 7 years and you're gone. So if you don't leave a legacy within 7 years or 6 years, it's on to you. You know, but this concept of parties must get re-elected, governments, presidents must get re-elected, is what makes them not think big, because all the projects, a lot of the projects they tend to embark on are short-term projects. They need to do them to win the elections, and so you see shoddy construction here and there. It rains and the rain washes, all the seemingly tarred roads. But we can do a lot better than that. And I'm hopeful, my friends, that this epic journey we have embarked on would yield results in the near future. Hopefully in 5 years, not in 40 years, as envisioned by the African Union. But I want to thank you for all your support. I want to thank the government of Ghana as well. I mean, they have supported, an institutional support, I must tell you, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we're grateful. And we're grateful to all the governments who have opened their doors and, given us access to their ministers and leadership. And we must commend them. The government of Algeria, we thank them very much for their hospitality. I want to thank the government of Kenya. I want to thank the government of Rwanda, the government of Uganda, the government of Lesotho, Eswatini, Botswana. I want to thank the government of DRC, the government of the Republic of Congo, the government of Angola, of Gabon, and all the governments who have been very positive towards this campaign. When the history of Africa is written, your leaders who played a role to, facilitating for us to embark on this campaign would be remembered kindly. And to those governments who were utterly rubbish, who put impediments in the way and snubbed us, and in some cases like Mauritania, denied us visas twice. We see you, and we know that you are the problem of Africa. And we know that you don't have the visionary leaders to transform your respective countries. And so we feel no way, as Jamaicans will say. We are not upset. All of us cannot be smart. We would have countries who are backward, and clearly Mauritania is one of those countries. And so let them, let them be steeped in their foolishness, and let the rest of Africa move on. That is what needs to happen. And so we would continue to mention the governments who are positive towards this Pan-African vision, and we hope that these governments would actually walk the talk and make it happen. Because it's one thing receiving us and rolling out the red carpet for us to walk on and getting us to see your leaders. Is another thing actually giving meaning to what we're doing. And I'm confident. I know some of the leaders actually mean what they said to us. So we see how it goes. But all in all, Africa is very beautiful. Let's explore Africa. But also, my friends, let's bring down the fares. You see, as part of the vision, you can't have free movement of people when airfare tickets are so expensive. Air tickets are so expensive in Africa. I mean, can you imagine how good and how pleasant it will be for air tickets from, say, Senegal to Gambia costing, say, $90 or $100, the number of people who would move. Can you imagine if tickets from, say, North Sudan or South Sudan to South Africa is, say, $100 or $150? People would move. But when you make the tickets so expensive, it will be extremely difficult for people, to move freely, because, it's beyond the pay grade of the average African. I mean, it costs you a lot more to travel within Africa than it costs you to fly to Europe or the Middle East or North America. And the politicians would have to talk about this. I mean, if this were Europe, the EU MPs would not even put up with it. That to fly to one European Union country, you have to move out of the EU. That it is expensive to travel outside of the EU than to travel within the EU. The leaders wouldn't put up with it. So this is the Abdoulaye Wade Stadium. It's called Stade du Senegal. As a matter of fact, President Abdoulaye Wade was a visionary leader who did a lot of great things for Senegal. It's unfortunate it's a bit dark. It's morning, but it's still dark, so you can't see it. And a lot of the infrastructure is credited to Abdoulaye Wade, and we must commend him highly for his visionary leadership. But the final point I'm making is on the cost of travel in Africa. If you make it so expensive, people can't move, goods can't move, you know? And so the airport taxes would have to come down, ticket prices would have to come down, and this culture of moving out of Africa to get to Africa certainly is not a way forward. I mean, when we were forced literally to fly to Morocco from Lusaka because we had an accident and then we lost time for about 3 weeks. We couldn't move, we needed to fix our vehicle. And then the most expensive tickets, guess what? Were South African Airlines and then Egypt Air. And the least expensive tickets, Air France, Qatar Airways and Emirates. And eventually we had to take Air France and move to France and transit through France before we could get to Morocco. I mean, that is how mindless the problem of Africa is. And this is not rocket science. If this doesn't bother us, then we've got a bigger problem than all of us are thinking. So I'm hoping that we would create the infrastructure. I mean, look at this road, absolutely world class. You know, and it's straight up like this into Gambia. And if we build an infrastructure like this, including rail, and making it cheaper for people to fly, things will happen for our people. So my friends, I want to thank you for your support and prayers. Long live Africa, long live the vision of Kwame Nkrumah, of Modibo Keita, of Julius Nyerere, and, you know, King Mohammed of Morocco, and Sekou Touré of Guinea, and all the African leaders, you know, who want Africa to be way ahead of its time and to be competitive. And when we say a visa-free Africa, we mean a visa-free for all African nationals, black, white, Indian, so long as they are Africans, whether they are in the Caribbean, the North Americas, or whatever. So long as they are African and hold African passports, they should be able to travel within the continent of Africa freely. And of course, so long as they are of Caribbean descent. You know, our people were taking, millions of them in the Caribbean. And when we talk about a united Africa, we should be thinking about them as well, and bringing them closer to the motherland and making things happen for our people. So I'll see you in the Gambia, my friends.